They told you that a man proves his worth by winning a woman's heart. That to chase her, to suffer for her, to long for her, that's noble. That's romantic. That's what makes you human. But they didn't tell you the full story, did they? They didn't tell you that this whole game, the pursuit, the fantasy, the chase, was never designed for your happiness. It was designed to keep you running in circles, chasing shadows. They fed you a dream, and you paid for it with your pride, your peace, and your soul. But there was once a man who saw through it all. His name was Diogenes of Sinope. He walked barefoot through the filth of ancient Athens, slept in a barrel, carried a lantern in broad daylight, claiming he was searching for one honest man. While other philosophers wrote about virtue and the stars, Diogenes mocked society's obsession with appearances, status, and desire. He didn't care about being liked or admired. He cared about truth. He said a wise man should be able to carry his happiness within himself. Now ask yourself, can you? Or have you made your happiness depend on her? Her smile, her attention, her approval. You handed her the keys to your self-worth, and when she didn't give you back what you hoped for, you were shattered. You think you're chasing love, but really, you're just running from your own emptiness. Diogenes would have laughed. And he did. He once saw a young man blush in front of a beautiful woman and shouted, "Don't be ashamed! The fault isn't yours, it's nature's, for making such creatures irresistible to fools." You think your hunger is romantic. He saw it as foolish. You think chasing makes you a strong man. He thought it made you weak. He urinated in public. He even pleasured himself in the marketplace. When people gasped, he shrugged and said, "If only it were just as easy to cure hunger by rubbing my stomach." Why did he do these things? Not because he lacked shame, but because he wanted to expose yours. The truth is, your shame is the leash. You hide your impulses, not to master them, but to appear desirable, to be more acceptable to her. You act like a gentleman, not because it's who you truly are, but because you think it will make her choose you. You wear masks. Diogenes burned them. You build pedestals. He smashed them. You walk into rooms scanning for beauty, hoping to be seen. Diogenes walked into rooms scanning for foolishness, and more often than not, he found it in men just like you. Men trying too hard. Men dressing like peacocks. Men starving for attention and calling it confidence. He once said, "I threw away my cup when I saw a child drinking from his hands." That's who he was. He stripped life down to the bone. No decoration. No pretending. And you? You decorate your cage. You chase softness when you haven't mastered strength. You hunger for beauty when you haven't found peace. Diogenes wasn't against women. He was against illusions. And there's no illusion more dangerous than the one that says a woman's love will complete you. He said, "He has the most who is content with the least." But you're never content. You scroll endlessly. You wait on a text like it's oxygen. You daydream about girls who never loved you, or worse, girls who once did, until your neediness made them stop. You were told to chase. You were told that the pursuit was part of being a man. But Diogenes didn't chase. He stood still and let the truth expose the lies. One day, Alexander the Great, that Alexander, found Diogenes sunbathing. The ruler of the known world stood before him and said, "What can I do for you?" Diogenes didn't bow, didn't flatter. He simply looked up and said, "Step out of my sunlight." That right there is power. That is freedom. You, on the other hand, you chase women like they're the sun. You orbit them like a cold planet begging for heat. You mold yourself to fit their desires. You cut off pieces of yourself hoping they'll finally say you're enough. And you call that love? Diogenes would have called it slavery. Not because women enslave you, but because you walked into the chains on your own, smiling. He said, "The most beautiful woman is nothing without character, and character is nothing without truth." And here's the truth. Most of what you call love isn't love at all. It's just fear of being alone, dressed up in poetry. Most of what you give isn't generosity, it's negotiation. You hand her your time, your energy, your loyalty, hoping she'll give you something back that makes you feel like a man. That's not love. That's a trade. A transaction wrapped in flowers. And when she doesn't deliver, when she goes cold, when she pulls away, when she loves you less the more you love her, you're devastated. But not because you lost her. No. You're shattered because you lost your mirror. The one that reflected back your worth. Diogenes didn't need a mirror. He stood in the street and called the world what it was. Rotten. Pretentious. Full of men hiding behind the idea of love because they never learned to stand alone. And now I ask you, not as someone better than you, but as a brother, when will you stop chasing what will not save you? When will you stop calling obedience love, sacrifice connection, and self-erasure romance? Because the woman you chase is not your enemy. Your illusion of her is. You call it loyalty, but it's dependency. You call it passion, but it's addiction. And every time she leaves, every time she pulls away, you're left broken, but not because she did anything wrong. It's because you placed all your worth in her hands, and she never asked for that job. Diogenes said, "It is the privilege of the gods to want nothing, and of godlike men to want little." So what kind of godlike man collapses at the silence of a woman who won't text him back? You weren't born to chase. You weren't made to orbit. You were made to build. But somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that your value came from being chosen, not from choosing yourself. So now you scroll through dating apps like a beggar with a bull, hoping today will be the day someone sees you. You smile through rejection like it's a badge of honor. You swallow your pride like medicine, and you call it dating. But Diogenes? He would have called it decay. He lived like a stray dog, mocking the rich to their faces, living off scraps. Yet even Alexander the Great, the most powerful man of his time, stood in front of him and was humbled. Why? Because Diogenes had nothing to lose. And the man who has nothing to lose, he can't be controlled. You, though? You give everything before she even asks. You change your wardrobe, your voice, your plans, just to maybe fit the version of you she might like. You call it romantic. But it's submission. It's performance. And deep down you know it. And here's the brutal truth, she doesn't respect it. Not because she's cruel, but because instinctively, she feels what Diogenes knew. What is chased loses value. What runs after something is not in control, it's controlled by it. And that's the secret no one tells you. Women are drawn not to your sacrifice, not to your devotion, but to your sovereignty. You try so hard to please her that you become invisible. You try so hard to be noticed that you fade into noise. You call it love, but what she sees is desperation. And when she leaves, and eventually she will, maybe not out of cruelty, but boredom, fatigue, or instinct, you'll feel like your whole world collapsed. But ask yourself honestly, did you love her? Or did you love who you got to be while you were with her? Did you love her soul? Or did you love how her presence masked your emptiness? Diogenes would have said, I'm looking for a man. Not a male, a man. A soul forged by fire, not flattery. A man who can stand alone under the sky and still feel whole. Not a boy who needs a woman's eyes to feel like he matters. Not a follower searching for a queen, but a sovereign king in his own right. And maybe that's what stings the most, realizing that what you were chasing wasn't her, it was the feeling of being wanted. And when that feeling fades, your identity crumbles with it. So you go back into the world bruised and confused, looking for another woman to save you, another goddess to worship, another mirror to tell you who you are, because you never learned to see yourself without one. And that is the tragedy. You were trained to conquer mountains, but not your own mind. You were taught to win riches, but not self-respect. You were encouraged to attract women, but never to ask why. And when you finally stop and ask, when you finally question what all this effort has been for, the silence is deafening. Because it forces you to face the truth. Most of your life has been spent chasing people who never wanted you, who tolerated you, who only loved you when you were useful. And you thought that was normal. Diogenes didn't. He thought it was pathetic. He once said, "Other dogs bite only their enemies. I'd bite even my friends to wake them up. So let me bite you now, brother, not to hurt, but to wake you." Stop chasing what's running away. Stop trading your soul for attention. Stop lowering yourself and calling it love. A man who knows his worth doesn't chase. He chooses. He builds. He walks. And if she wants to walk beside him, fine. If not, he keeps walking. That was Diogenes. That can be you. But only if you're willing to unlearn the fantasy. Only if you're ready to see the truth, that the man who chases is not noble. He's not romantic. He's not brave. He's lost. And no woman, no matter how kind, how loving, how radiant, can lead you back to yourself. That's not her job. That's yours. You think it's just part of being a man, the hunger, the pursuit, the ache. Every song tells you it is. Every movie says longing equals love. That if you suffer enough, it must be real. But Diogenes? He would have spat at that. Literally. He once stood in front of a statue, begging it for arms. When asked why, he said, "I'm just practicing rejection." That's how ridiculous he thought it all was, begging for what doesn't respond, begging for what doesn't care. And here you are, in the age of information, opportunity, and freedom. And you still beg. Not for bread, but for affection. You call her 10 times after she ghosts you. You write long texts she never replies to. You tiptoe around your own truth, just in case it's too much. You live in your own mind, defending yourself against invisible judgments, hoping she'll finally say you're worthy. And what you don't realize is, you've become what Diogenes despised most, a man chained by invisible shackles. That's the truth about the chase. It's not courtship. It's not courage. It's not love. It's servitude. And you're the willing servant. Diogenes once said, "I know nothing except the fact of my ignorance." He embraced his flaws like armor. He was real, raw, and untamed. But you hide your flaws like they're sins. You present a filtered version of yourself, hoping that being palatable will make you lovable. But here's what no one tells you. Real strength doesn't perform. Real strength says, "Here I am. Take it or leave it." Diogenes had nothing. But that's what made him dangerous. He couldn't be seduced. Not by beauty. Not by praise. Not by power. He didn't need to chase, because he had nothing to prove. And until you get there, until your respect for yourself is louder than your loneliness, you'll keep chasing illusions. You'll keep giving away your power in hopes that someone will return it to you as love. But they won't. And it's not because they're cruel. It's because love, real love, doesn't grow where desperation lives. Let me tell you something most men don't want to hear. She doesn't admire your efforts. She doesn't respect your persistence. She doesn't feel magnetized by your sacrifice. She might appreciate it. She might even enjoy it. But she doesn't feel it. Because what attracts a woman is not the man who follows her, but the one she can't control. The one who's free. The one who could walk away at any moment, not as a threat, not as a tactic, but as a truth. Because his life isn't built around her approval. And that's the irony. The moment you stop chasing is the moment she starts noticing. Not because you're playing games, but because the man who is peaceful in his own skin, the man who doesn't need her to feel like a man, is rare. He's real. Just like Diogenes. He walked through the streets in daylight holding a lantern. "I'm looking for a man," he said. And still, the world couldn't give him one. Because most men, even now, are not men. They're roles, scripts, hollow outlines waiting to be filled by female attention. But the man who stops chasing? He's something else entirely. He's whole. And he's dangerous. Because he no longer fears being alone. And that, my brother, is where everything changes. The man who doesn't fear being alone cannot be controlled. He can't be manipulated, bribed, or broken by silence. That's the man Diogenes wanted you to become. Not someone who hates women. Not someone who avoids love. But someone who stops building his identity on the hope of being loved. Someone who no longer needs the gaze of a woman to feel like he matters. You think chasing her proves your worth. But the only thing it proves is that you still don't believe you're worthy without her. And that's the real heartbreak. You chase because you think love will fill you. But real love begins the moment you stop needing to be filled. The moment you stop bleeding out your power hoping someone else will bandage your wounds. Diogenes didn't beg for a bandage. He walked through life exposed, vulnerable, honest, and free. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. And now I'm asking you, man to man, when does the chase end? Because she is not the destination. You are. And deep down you know it. You still hear the word, love, and your heart skips. You still crave it, even after all the unanswered messages, the ghosting, the failed talking stages, the ache of being almost good enough. You still believe there's a woman out there who'll make it all make sense. Who'll heal you. Who'll finally see the real you and stay. But Diogenes would glare right through that hope. And he'd say, "You're addicted. Addicted to hope. And hope, my friend, is the bait they use to keep you tame." That's what makes the chase so dangerous. Not that it breaks you, but that it gives you just enough to keep you chasing. A smile here. A flirty text there. A late-night call that feels like intimacy, but never becomes it. And you take the bait. Again and again. Not because you're weak, but because you were trained to treat breadcrumbs like banquets. Every small sign she gives you, you build a future out of it. You imagine something solid from something fragile. You mistake interest for commitment, attention for love, curiosity for care. And every time you give her your best, your heart, your time, your thoughts, you walk away with less. You feel drained, empty, confused. And you call that devotion. But Diogenes would call it delusion. He once said, "I do not possess. Therefore I am not possessed." Understand that. The more you invest in a woman who hasn't earned it, the more she owns you. Not because she's trying to, but because power doesn't need intention to exist. It just is. And while you're dreaming about her, what dreams are dying inside you? While you're refreshing her. Last seen. What ideas, what passions, what purpose inside you is going unseen? You give your energy to the mystery of her. But when will you turn that gaze inward? Because this chase isn't really about her. It's about escaping yourself. She's the mirage that lets you avoid the desert inside. And when she disappears, the silence that hits you isn't hers. It's yours. Diogenes didn't run from that silence. He lived in it. He filled it with laughter, with clarity, with truth. He barked like a dog, not to be funny, but to strip the layers off society. To show us how much of our lives are performance. And chasing women? That's just another performance. Another mask. You become an actor in your own life, and the more you act, the less you recognize yourself. You want her to see you, but do you even see yourself? You want her to admire you, but you hate yourself every time you shrink, every time you edit your soul to stay in her orbit. And when she finally leaves, you break. But not because she broke you. You break because you gave her something fragile, your sense of worth, and hoped she'd protect it. But that was never her responsibility. She was just passing through. That's what Diogenes understood. The world doesn't owe you love, or clarity, or even kindness. It owes you nothing. He walked among men like a ghost, unimpressed by wealth, unaffected by beauty, untouched by status. He didn't perform. He didn't kneel. While other men gathered to impress women, Diogenes was digging in the dirt, because he'd rather have truth than applause. You, though? You crave illusion. You think if you perform just right, say the right things, wear the right mask, she'll choose you. But the longer you perform, the more you disappear. And when she finally turns away, it's not really you she's leaving. It's the role you played. The mask you wore. And you stand there, hollow, wondering if the real you was ever there to begin with. But he was. He is. And that's what Diogenes wants you to remember. Not through her eyes. Not through her validation. But in yourself. In your breath. In your presence. In your ability to sit alone and feel complete. Because that's where freedom begins. There comes a moment in every man's life, maybe after another night of silence, maybe after watching her laugh in someone else's arms, when the ache becomes familiar. Not sharp. Just dull. Lingering. It's the moment you realize you were never in control. That all your effort was ritual. That you weren't choosing, you were begging to be chosen. Diogenes would have grabbed you by the collar. Not to scold you, but to wake you. He lived among dogs, not because he loved filth, but because dogs don't pretend. Dogs don't chase what won't be caught. Dogs don't build their identity around rejection. Diogenes believed that to live without pretending, that was virtue. And every time you hide your truth to appear just right, you're pretending. Every time you dim your fire to seem harmless, you're lying, not to her, but to yourself. He was once asked, "What's the most beautiful thing in the world?" He said, "Freedom of speech." Yet here you are, censoring your thoughts, watching your tone, softening your opinions, afraid that one honest moment will drive her away. That's not love. That's captivity. You fear walking away. You fear silence. You fear rejection. Diogenes feared nothing. Because he owned nothing, not even the illusion that someone else could define his worth. And you've built your identity like a collage. A little humor here, a little vulnerability there, a quote you read online, a gesture you saw in a movie. But here's the brutal truth. If she didn't want you when you were silent, she doesn't deserve you when you're singing. You've made your life a performance. For what? A glance? A moment of validation? She doesn't even know what she wants. But somehow, you've made her the judge, jury, and executioner of your masculinity. Diogenes would have pissed on that whole idea. He knew the truth. The man who doesn't chase is not alone. He's sovereign. The man who walks away isn't rejected. He's choosing. Being unseen by her isn't a curse, it's a test. Will you see yourself now that she doesn't? You say you miss her. But what you really miss is the permission she gave you to feel worthy. You miss the mirror, not the person. Because if you truly loved her, you'd still love her in her absence. And if you truly loved yourself, you'd never need her reflection to prove it. She is not your beginning. And she should never be your end. Your beginning starts when you stop running. When you sit like Diogenes in the sun and say, I have nothing. I need nothing. I am enough. Not with arrogance. Not with bitterness. But with liberation. Let her choose. Let her go. Let her love someone else. That is not your death. That is your unveiling. That's the death of the boy who thought love had to be earned with suffering. Diogenes didn't suffer for love. He simply refused to kneel. And that, my brother, is the lesson. Do not kneel. Not to beauty, not to belonging, not to the myth of completion. Stand. Stand in your hunger. Stand in your solitude. Stand in the clarity of knowing no woman will complete a man who hasn't met himself. She can join you. She can walk beside you. But she cannot save you from yourself. That's your work. That's your burden. And that's your freedom. Burn the script. Kill the chase. Walk away from the altar. Because once you stop chasing, you'll realize you were never chasing her. You were chasing the version of you that never needed to chase at all. And that man? He's been waiting for you the whole time.